In a small, forgotten train station stood an old wall clock. Its glass was cracked, its hands were slow, and it was completely unreliable. It never, ever showed the correct time. It was the laughingstock of the station. Travelers would point at it and chuckle. "Look at that old thing," they'd say, "still hanging there, as useless as ever." Station workers complained about it constantly. Why don't they just take it down? It's an embarrassment. Some even suggested smashing it to pieces, putting it out of its misery. But for some reason, the clock remained, a silent, broken fixture on the wall. Day after day, it watched the world hurry by, a world obsessed with minutes and seconds, a world it could no longer keep up with. The station master, a quiet man named Mr. Abernathy, would sometimes just stare at it with a thoughtful expression. When asked why he didn't replace it, he'd just shrug and say, "It's been here longer than I have. It's part of the place." And so, the clock hung there, its hands crawling at their own strange pace, marking a time that existed only for itself. The laughter and the complaints became background noise, just another part of its long, quiet existence. One evening, the weather turned violent. A storm rolled in with a fury that rattled the station's old windows. Thunder cracked like a whip, and rain came down in solid sheets, turning the platform into a glistening, dark mirror. The station was almost deserted, a lonely outpost against the raging storm. A young traveler, a musician named Lucas, arrived much earlier than he had planned. He was catching the last train of the night, and he'd misjudged his travel time, arriving a full hour before departure. Drenched and a bit weary, he stepped into the dim light of the waiting room. He glanced up at the infamous broken clock. Its hands pointed to 9:45. He knew the clock was wrong. Of course, everyone knew. His own watch told him it was only 10:30, and his train wasn't due until 11:30. Still, seeing the clock's time gave him a strange feeling. An hour to wait according to the real world. But according to this broken timepiece, his train was still an eternity away. He decided to find a dry corner and wait. He pulled out a book, letting the sound of the rain and the distant rumble of thunder become the soundtrack to his reading. The waiting room felt safe and warm compared to the chaos outside. He was in no rush. The broken clock seemed to agree. Suddenly, a sound tore through the night, a horrifying shriek of metal grinding against metal that was louder than any thunderclap. It was followed by a deafening crash that shook the entire station to its foundations. The lights flickered and died, plunging the waiting room into complete darkness. Lucas's heart hammered against his ribs. He scrambled to his feet, his book forgotten on the floor. He rushed to the door and peered out into the rain-swept darkness. What he saw made his blood run cold. Further down the tracks, right where the platform began, the last train of the night lay twisted and broken. Carriages were piled on top of each other in a grotesque tangle of steel. It had derailed, violently, catastrophically. The spot where the train had crashed was exactly where passengers would have been crowding, waiting to board. It was exactly where he would have been standing if he'd followed his own schedule and gone out to the platform to wait. He stood there, frozen, the rain plastering his hair to his face. The horrifying realization dawned on him. The broken clock. He had arrived early, but the clock's slow. Nonsensical time had made him feel like he had even more time to spare. It had subconsciously convinced him to stay inside, to be patient, to wait just a little longer in the warmth of the station. That simple, almost foolish decision to linger, influenced by a useless clock, had saved his life. If he had been on time, if he had been standing on that platform, he would be gone. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a clear, quiet sky. The station was no longer deserted. It was crowded with rescue workers, officials, and hushed onlookers. The wreckage of the train was a stark, terrible monument to the tragedy. But inside the waiting room, a small group of people stood silently. They weren't looking at the chaos outside. They were all looking up at the old, cracked wall clock. The station master, Mr. Abernathy, was there. So were a few of the workers who had complained about it for years. Lucas stood among them. No one was laughing now. No one called it useless. There was only a profound, respectful silence. The clock's hands still pointed to their own imaginary time, ticking away at their own slow, steady pace. It's a powerful reminder, isn't it? Sometimes, the very things in our lives that seem broken, delayed, or useless might just be silent guardians. They might be delays that protect us from a path we aren't meant to take yet. What seems like an obstacle could be a blessing in disguise. It challenges us to look beyond the surface, to find meaning in the imperfect. So the next time you encounter a setback or a delay, maybe it's not just a broken clock. Maybe it's the universe giving you the gift of time. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more stories that remind us that nothing in this life is truly meaningless.